Welcome back, everyone, to yet another episode of the Economic Preppers, where I'm joined by my co-hosts Patrick and Dylan once again. How you doing, guys? Good. All right, we're going to jump right in. We got plenty to talk about, lots of different topics, as usual. We're going to lead off with the things that everybody are talking about. You got to touch on them. We got, first off, and not a great view of the story, but we all know Orange Man bad. That's what the media is trying to say. And the indictment's coming out. Meanwhile, there's lots of different stories that just to play, give equal time and equal coverage about Hunter and his dad stacking cash, fat stacks all over the place, and they're trying to trace it down. So, guys, what do you want to talk about this? Dylan, I'm going to throw it to you. Go in either direction. What do you got?
Man, it is a circus. If I saw this video on Instagram today, and it was basically a quick video on how to steal an election, and not saying the election was stolen, but like it was basically like that one movie that came out where OJ was like, "If I would have done it, this is how I would have done it," and so. It just is ridiculous at this point in time what all things are going on, all the manipulation, all this stuff. Like, just seeing these articles about Trump being indicted, just seeing them continually go after this guy. It's like, it's just mind blowing because I'm trying to like see it from a perspective of like, what if he is as bad as they say he is? That would mean that he's so much worse than any of the other potential really bad people that have been in positions of power, that like this stuff is still going on. Like he's being treated so much worse than anyone else. And then it really surprises me that like there hasn't been anyone else that is like had the same treatment as Trump in these scenarios. And it doesn't seem like reasonable. And so it's like, why are they going after this guy so hard? And it just to me, it just speaks to just the mass manipulation, the mass like gaslighting of the American people by the media, and just really them trying to lock down, control, and silence any sort of threat to their stronghold on power in any way possible. So that's kind of my takeaway on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I could go in lots of different directions, but I'm going to pass the talking stick over to Patrick to see what he has to say. What do you think, Patrick?
I mean, I have two main thoughts. One is it's pretty simple, right? Like, it never sticks. So the track record of like there being any validity to anything that they're trying to throw at him, it's quite laughable at this point. It's like, really, we've cried wolf kind of a lot over here, and you've never had anything happen out of it. So that's one piece. And then the other thing that I think about, especially when you talk about Hunter and Joe, it's like, I really thought that it would take more money to buy off the vice president. Like we're talking 3 or 5, we're talking like just a few $1 million. I'm looking at a bunch of us in the crypto community. I'm like, hey, if we get like 50 of us, we could probably buy the government. Is that really how easy it is $3 to $5 million like for these companies to pay off? And I just kind of look at it going like, how shameful that a few $1 million is what caused them to just compromise their integrity and their values and their citizens. It just in the crypto market, we lose $3 million like every second some days, and we don't blink an eye. Like, I could only imagine what we could do with an honest government, but I didn't think that it was so cheap to buy off politicians.
Well, I definitely have a comment on that, but I'm going to let Dylan, because I saw he was nodding there. What's your take on that, Dylan? Do you think it's just one payment of many?
I mean, I think you bring up a good point about the price for someone's moral integrity. And I think given that we live in a day and age where I think individual morals and willpower and people that have like principles are at an all-time low. Morals are at an all-time low, and the number of people out there that have strong principles are at an all-time low. And I think that's definitely a sign of just the fiat corruption that has happened. Like you see it in like, and I'll go back to some of the stuff that's a little more raw, but like you see it in the massive amounts of people, young women that are signing up for OnlyFans, and young men that are buying that kind of content, right? Like selling their bodies, selling like stuff that had traditionally been very sacred for like $3.99 a month to people, and like the majority of them are making like hardly any money. And so they're doing it for the promise of like not much money. Some do make a lot of money, but they're selling their soul for such little amounts. And so when you say like, is it surprising that politicians would sell out for a couple $1 million? No, like, selling out is seems to be something that's not that
But
expensive.
bro, millions of dollars isn't like ridiculous amounts of money
No,
anymore. We're talking like, hey, a couple of homes.
but it can still but it still can be the difference of like stability in your life or not, especially for someone who like doesn't know. It's just like, it just seems like the price for selling out is just a lot lower nowadays, for better or worse. And I think it's for worse. Like, we're seeing the impacts of that.
You also have to put it in context of time, right? Because some of these payments were made years ago. And also, what do these congressmen make? They don't make allegedly that much money for their job. They make like,
I know, but I had like a conversation similar to this with a bunch of people from my church, and the way it went was like, would you do this for X number of dollars? And I was like, no. And they looked at me, what about Bitcoin? And for a second, I was like, would I do what? I'll finally listen to what you're asking. And they said, would you do X for like 100 Bitcoin? I said, no. And I said, there's no amount of Bitcoin, I don't care what you're going to give me, that will say, I will say yes. It's just not, there is no way I can be bought. That's my answer. So to hear them saying like, some guys would be like, yeah, $10, I'll do it. But to me, it's like, I don't understand how you would compromise your morals and your values and integrity and stand up with your family and kids and not be a sham at home. Like, how could you even look yourself in the mirror? So to me, this whole conversation is really just about weak men who don't understand their value.
But like, there's not even people in communities to hold these people accountable. I think that's part of the problem, is that like, you say someone's compromising their value, but like, who's holding them accountable? Who's holding them to it? And I think that's a huge like issue that's facing our country right now, is like you said, weak men, right? And it from the side of weak men that won't hold themselves to a standard, and then won't hold others to that standard as well. Because it's tough to hold someone else to a standard if you won't even hold your own person to that. And I think that's a problem. Because, like they say, the saying is, when the cat is away, the mice come out to play. So it's like, when any sort of like moral principle goes away, like, you get it, that descent into hedonism and that descent into nihilism. And they're like, well, I'd rather be able to buy something and live comfortably today. There's not anything really that I'm worried about. So they just do it.
Yeah, just a couple points to touch on before we move on from this topic, which I'm sure could dominate the show, as it's dominating many shows right now. But I think part of what's going on right now is they're highlighting some of the things that don't get talked about, especially in the mainstream media. And they're trying that. You can see even the rhinos are responding, and they're taking the media's questions and twisting them, answering about talking points they want to address, about like even Trump has brought up the Clintons, the Clinton 2012 sock drawer tapes, which I had to do research on. I had not heard that story before, but 79 audio tapes that President Clinton kept of conversations that he recorded at the time. And that brought up the NARA and PRA, which is the rights of the president to keep information whenever he wants and declassify whatever he feels up to, or it's his prerogative. So these rules that have not been in public light before, and that they're coming after Trump for, it's everything that they tend to come after him with usually backfires on them. It usually is like, he's like, bring it on, because I'll just turn it around one day and show, okay, you broke this rule, you broke that rule. And the propaganda that the mainstream media has been doing for the last 7 years goes all the way back to Obama, when he allowed that rule. But the problem has been, and I've been in conversations as well with people, that they don't know what the news really is. They don't take the time to investigate and watch shows like ours, or what used to be alternative media or alternative news sources, but they're not watching they're not believing the old ones either. So if you can't read the New York Times, you can't watch CNN, you can't watch ABC, because you can't trust them. But the recipe that they've given in the mainstream media is like, we repeat the same story over and over again, the same dogma, the same talking points, and eventually people just say, yeah, I've heard that 100 times before, and they believe it's true, even though it's not true, and it can be pointed out. But the dichotomy is that everybody in the non-traditional media, like us, we have to prove everything we say, whereas other people in the mainstream media can just say things and they're just taken at face value. And it's not an even playing field. But the evidence is now out there. It's just out there for people. It's getting easier and easier for them to see the lies and the mistruths and the things that they've been hiding. And Well, it's not pretty, but it is like coming to light now. And we haven't had someone that challenged the uniparty since Reagan. And this is what's happened since, a lot of things have happened there. And unfortunately, as Trump himself said, it's, they're coming after us and I'm just in the way. So with that said, let's move on to economic stuff, right? So let's see what the next story might hold here. So, well, okay, this is not economics. We got one more story to get through before we get there. I picked this one at random. There's a lot. It's still we're still in June. God, what they're doing to June. There's a fake holiday on the 19th called June.
It's not fake. It's real. It's Juneteenth.
Okay, it's a fake holiday in my book, but we'll move on. And then we've got all these different Pride Month is continued. All these posts and rainbows get displayed everywhere. Here's another one by NASA. Do we want to talk about Pride anymore? Is it all?
No, we don't have to. What I can say is I find it laughable because when I see the rainbow, I grew up in church, y'all. So the reality is I don't see gay or Pride anything. I'm like, oh, where's Noah's Ark? What are we talking about? I know what the rainbow stands for. So to me, I know it's meant to be offensive, but I kind of just laugh it off and realize you guys have no idea what that even means, what it symbolizes. And I just find it a little bit comical at this point. I'm over it. I've seen Target, take down a bunch of stuff. There's never been anything in our community here that resembles any of the stuff that's going on in social media in my community anyways. I've looked, trust me. The reality is though, it's we just need to learn to get over some of these things and stop letting the government push us into hating each other, and believe it. I've got my own belief systems, but the reality is I don't think many of us hate each other the way that they would make us seem to, I have gay friends and we hang out and they're fine. We have fun. I don't ever talk about it or think about it. It's never an issue, except for this month when they try to shove it in your face and try to stir the pot. Other than that, the other 11 months are great.
Yeah, I'm over it too. I just can't wait for it to be finally done. So let's turn the page. All right. So let's go on to the.
I do want to say just one thing on this is they are weaponizing this kind of stuff against us. Just keep that in mind when you see all this stuff. It's meant to provoke controversy. It's meant to polarize, and it's meant to take your money. Right? They're creating these holidays out of nowhere, the whole month of celebration, and every company that's plugged into that. We kind of talked about it in one of our previous week's episodes that gets funding from certain institutions or wants to get funding from certain large institutions. Yeah. They all are putting out the same message, right? Yeah. And so they're using it as some sort of a marketing scheme in order to drive clicks or tell you that they have a sale or whatnot to extract more wealth and resources from you.
I remember my wife and I were having this discussion, dude, and I was laughing so hard. She says something like, that's bullshit. They get a whole month. We made the babies. Why don't we get Father's Month and Mother's Month? Why can't we get a whole month of Mother's Month? Why is it Mother's Day? And they get a whole month? We made them all. We should get more than a day.
Well, I think it was the Prime Minister of Italy, the president or something. They just made it Family Pride Month. They just added a word, said it's going to be Family Pride Month instead of Pride Month. So I like that angle. But
that's great.
Yeah, I think, what you said, Dylan, is 100% right. And if you guys aren't on our Telegram, we have a free Telegram for economic preppers. The link will be below. And also, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Helps out the channel. But on the Telegram, I posted, I think it was last night or night before, an IMF video that I had not found before, but it was a gentleman by the name of Bo Lee. And he was basically stating or restating what you were saying, Dylan, is that people that are taking money from the IMF are now going to have to conform with the climate change standards that they're pushing. So with money being tight and hard to acquire, nations are looking to borrow again to try and prop up their economies. And the IMF is more than willing to step up to the plate and say, sure, we'll hand you over another loan, but you have to abide by our rules. So they are pushing narratives, pushing rules to along with their money. And that's part of the money comes with a cost, not just with an interest rate, but also on how they get spent and how it gets utilized. Mm-hmm. But this speaking of money, as we can finally turn the page and talk about economics, at the bottom of the article here, So this one is from Zero Hedge. This was an article that talked about, they're trying to figure out what the direction is after the Fed met yesterday, and that's a little hard to see. I'll try to zoom in, but the Fed paused rates yesterday, and they hinted that in July they might raise it again, but the fact that they paused an interest rate, they didn't raise rates the first time in months, was significant. And now all these different markets, you got real estate, you have companies, you have finance, you have banks, all trying to figure out what comes next. Are we done? Is this the pause? Are we done going up, or are interest rates going to start coming down? Is inflation coming down? Everyone's trying to sort it out based on one data point of a pause. So I think that's Patrick, do you see any positive direction in what the Fed decided to do yesterday?
No. I mean, I wouldn't call it positive or negative. I would just say that they're delaying the inevitable.
Yeah. Doing anything on interest rates there?
I'm kind of the same page as Patrick. It's just they're just kicking. It's just all game to kick the can down the road, right? To extend the game as long as possible. And so they're just going to keep doing these things and wait for people's attention not to be on it, then do something else. And it's just like it's going to be the same old.
Well, I've noticed the trend lately in the last month or two that a lot of banks are starting to offer 4 or 5% return on your money by depositing funds in banks. And it seems to me that that's just another trap that they're trying to pull funds into the banks. And again, try to create that narrative that your funds are safe in the banks. So I hope that people aren't falling for that trap yet again, because we haven't had a bank fail in 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Some might say we're due. So we'll have to see there.
And those 4 to 5% numbers, oftentimes it requires you to lock up your money. So you have to lock up your money for a specified period of time, a certain amount of money. And, you always got to say is I made a video the other day, but there is no risk free, right? There's always a risk somewhere. Someone's always taking on risk if you're getting any sort of yield on something. That's right. So it's coming from somewhere. And if you're listening to this, while those rates can sound good and they may work for your individual situation, I think the key is that rather than trying to look at just all the low hanging fruit, is look at the opportunities you can build something to add value, right? And try to actually put the money to work there, creating value for yourself, your community. That's going to be much more sustainable and long term, and provide more long term than just trying to hope that some rate that the bank says is going to work out for you. Because we've all seen what happens to those kind of rates and stuff in the crypto space. You think, oh my gosh, this is amazing. 10, 12, 15, 20%. Next thing you know, it's all gone, right? You can't get access to it. But if you build something that works, that adds value to society, that can last lifetimes.
Well, we'll definitely get into crypto. We got plenty of crypto stories coming up shortly. But before I do, I want to make mention of another thing that's impacted by interest rates, which is real estate, in particular commercial real estate. That's another area that people are trying to figure out what's going to happen with home loans and commercial real estate. Here we see, again, the rates are paused. We have huge vacancies in New York City and other metro areas. I heard that several hotels in San Francisco, they aren't paying, they're not going to make payments anymore. They're basically walking away from their loans. And at the same time, one of the companies that buys a lot of real estate lately, BlackRock, as we transition to talking about some Bitcoin here, they're close to filing for a Bitcoin ETF. Now, we'll have to see if it's going to be approved, but this could be...
no, they're not close to filing. Wow. They did file for it. Not only did they file, and then...
Well, I'm reading the article as it says, which was written about 5 hours ago.
They filed I'm today. Sorry. I saw the filing, and not only did they file, but Soros Fund Management came out and said, you guys are acting like a bunch of children and benefit from an adult in the room. And then on the third part of that is you have them noticing that they're going to use Coinbase custody. Coinbase custody. Mm-hmm. This is a big, big problem. And it's clearly Grayscale has been trying to have this for months. They've been working diligently to try to appease the SEC to approve one. And now it looks like, wait, SEC is going to sue Coinbase first. And then after they sue Coinbase, it's just a whole cascade of effects that seems really like a setup. It's like a chess match and they're playing this game.
Yeah, it seems like they're just using Coinbase and Binance back and forth like pawns in this game, because there's, we've seen some of the things that have come out lately. We've got this one, the SEC went after Coinbase and Binance this week, which is, Brian Armstrong has been trying to do best he can. Coinbase went public. That's what they had to deal with, the SEC and those rules. And he's tried to play as best he could for as long as he can, but he keeps getting railed on from either the SEC or the CFTC, mostly the SEC and Gary Gensler. Some people are calling for his job now. And maybe this is a bone that they're throwing to him by BlackRock using Coinbase. But now, like you said, I don't know how it's going to play out and if it's a good thing or a bad thing for Coinbase and or crypto in general.
Lots of, I mean, there's nothing that it can do to hurt Bitcoin. Let me start there. That's what I told Jack today, is there's nothing you could do to hurt Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to keep on chugging forward regardless of what the SEC does or what Coinbase wants to do or what crypto exchange is still up and running. It will continue to go forward. There will be a new block mined every 10 minutes, and there will be Bitcoin rewarded every 10 minutes. That's just how it works. You can try to shut half of them down. The other half will still work. They'll just be more profitable. It can't hurt Bitcoin. The idea of Bitcoin going to zero now, it sounds quite absurd.
Well, it sounds absurd because there's just a bunch of just crazy people like us that would buy it all the way up, and still trade amongst ourselves. There's a lot of us out there, a lot more than people think. When people talk about Bitcoin going to zero, every single person has Bitcoin. We have to just give up on it. And there's people that won't ever give up on that. And like what you said, Patrick, is like, it makes Bitcoin's value proposition more clear and more valuable. It's just like, it's
very much like gold did in the early days of banking.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Can you go further with that?
Yeah, because the way that they started writing these notes was by how much gold. It was a gold ratio or a silver ratio. They were tied to precious metals. Then they didn't.
Yeah.
Well, right now, for banks to be able to offer any sort of credible digital currency, it will have to be backed with a digital asset of value, and that is Bitcoin. You are going to see a collection of baskets that will make up the new financial SDR. It will be something like, stop smiling, Jeff, Bitcoin, Litecoin, probably Monero will be part of that. I could see a privacy token like Monero being part of that, but you'll get big players.
No way will they use Monero.
Monero's market cap is ridiculously huge, and it can only get bigger, especially if it's valued as a decentralized privacy chain.
I get what you're saying. I understand why you say that.
There's no competition except for Litecoin's Mimblewimble.
I get why you're saying that, but I'm saying if it depends on who is the entity creating the basket. And I think if the entity is a government agency, they're not going to put a privacy coin in there.
They're going to need Bitcoin, period.
Oh, yes, they will, but I don't think they're going to put a privacy coin.
Well, that was the point I was making, is it's very much the new system like gold was in the early days of banking.
Yeah. The only difference is you can't really obfuscate how much Bitcoin you have. That's one of the beautiful things about it is, where they could with gold, you could say you have, a ton in the bank vault back there, but who gets access to the bank vault to verify? But with Bitcoin, you have to be able to show how much you have.
Yeah,
and it's verifiable.
That's a great point. I think that, Bitcoin is perfect for a government transactional coin, because you want something public that everybody can see what's happening. That's readily auditable and you can see what's going on. But when you're doing personal transactions, that's where you want the privacy. So I think that most the average person has no clue of the difference, nor can they even figure out what Monero is. But they understand their need and want of privacy and the value of cash in that regard. So that's why they're confused. Like, I've had conversations with people that I went to college with, and they understand, they're smart people, but they don't understand the differences between different blockchains and like Bitcoin's, like the different use cases and why different projects exist for those different utilities. Monero would replace cash very easily. Yes, I agree with that. The privacy version of that makes a lot of sense. But for government transactions, no way would you want to use Monero, because you want to be able to see, what government official is sending what amount of money to whatever country and have that traced back. And so there are use cases across the board. That's why I agree that there's going to be, SDR type baskets, and that's special drawing rights. For those who don't know, that's what the IMF usually doles out to countries that borrow funds, and it's a basket of different currencies, like the euro, the dollar.
If you think covert operations are going to stop, you got another thing coming. And if you think that they're not going to want to transact value without being traced, you've also got another thing coming. Countries have some of the biggest incentive to use a privacy chain.
Yeah.
Countries or governments? There's a difference.
Touche, governments.
Thank you. So governments want to. So that like my question is like, do we want clandestine governments or not? So that's a different conversation, different talking point entirely.
Yeah,
but
that's a big question.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think the answer is like as clear as we'd want it to be.
No.
My answer is I would like to have one, and I would like to be the leader of it.
As would most people that would like to be in charge of economies. I completely. That's kind of how dictators happen.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm just saying.
I'd be a benevolent dictator, just so you know.
The idea of a benevolent dictator is the perfect utopian leadership. However, we've never really had that. And usually absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's the saying. And if we give absolute power to someone, they wind up, putting tapes in a sock drawer or sending money to countries and then having it come back through their son through a shell company. So, I mean, these are just examples of what happens. And it's not just like in the last 20 years. It's happened for the last 200, 2,000 years. It's happened time and time again. So having public auditability of a blockchain is something new, and we have to say what's the right time to use that. And I think people would like to know where their money goes, and if they're paying taxes to a government, they want to make sure is it going for schools and roads and things that we think is the purpose of that money or not.
Yeah, and that's a really cool thing when you think about that, like being able to see where your money goes. And that's a really powerful concept. Now it's scary if you like siphoning off funds and saying that you didn't do that. But for someone paying their money, paying their taxes, being able to see like what projects it goes directly into, like how it's spent, and make that very clear. That's a really cool thing. Or that could provide a lot of promise and a lot of better production in the future. But it obviously comes with risks and trade-offs to think about. But to me, that sounds pretty cool. You can go look at like your taxes and see how much you owed, like see how much you paid, and then see exactly where it all went. Right? Hey, $10 of my taxes is now in working on this project in this location, and this is how long it took to get there. That'd be kind of cool. Maybe you can do it already. Maybe I'm just mistaken, but like seems like something that you could do when you use something like Bitcoin for that.
It'd be interesting too, because you could see like that's the ultimate democratization of voting for projects. Like if we said we need more infrastructure, and I want whatever tax dollars I provide to the government, I want 5% of it to go to this, or 7% to the education, and you see where the funds actually go. I mean, you could see what people really want to be done with their money, as opposed to putting rainbows in classrooms. So we'll talk.
Yeah.
Let's go back to crypto here for a little bit, because we have a little bit more international flavor on that. We've got Hong Kong, and that's a little bit small, but let's roll that up there. Hong Kong puts pressure on 3 major banks to take on crypto exchanges. So lots of pressure on exchanges there. Dylan, I think you shared this one. What did you want to discuss on this one?
So Hong Kong put pressure on 3 major banks to take on crypto exchanges as clients. I mean, that's one of the things that's been going on right now is, we talked about Operation Choke Point a lot, and how basically liquidity to the crypto industry is being cut off. So they don't have as many banking relations, and that can create an issue, because that, one thing that we're working on is showing our group, and we'll be putting together a video course, how to move between fiat to crypto to precious metals, and do that, because there's times where it's been easier in the past, and there's times where it's been harder. And we're kind of in one of those in-between zones where it's kind of harder. There's still a lot of options and opportunity out there. But the landscape is changing. And so seeing this article from Hong Kong saying, hey, like banks, you probably should form these relationships with these crypto exchanges, it's showing that they're trying to build infrastructure and stability in the space. And that's only a good thing over time. But I think the risk and what's going on is, I think the party of a lot of crypto projects, the party of basically counterfeiting money at scale and washing money at scale, I think that party, or that a certain phase of that party, has come to an end, right? Yeah. And so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these relationships ending now, and new ones having to be formed. And when these new relationships are formed, I think eventually it'll start a new game, and what that new game will look like will be interesting, but it'll be slightly different than the previous bull runs and what we've seen with the previous tokens. At least that's my opinion, but I could be completely wrong.
Well, just to build on what Dylan said here, and just to give a preview, we're only hours away, and they'll probably launched over the weekend or so. But this is our first course that we're putting out as the Economic Preppers, as he hinted at. It's Be Your Own Bank. It's how to move between fiat, Bitcoin, and precious metals, and the trials and tribulations that we've all experienced. But both Patrick, Dylan, and myself have been doing this for years, and what we've learned. And what we want to educate people, and people need to think about, like when you move from silver to gold to Bitcoin to cash and so on. And how do you pay your bills? Things you need to be mindful of, community, security. What's it like to go into a coin shop or a pawnbroker? All those different things are going to be out there. And we'll be follow-up as well. So this is launching. We're pre-launching it before the event in at the end of September, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this is launching briefly, and it's going to be very big discount. We'll announce that. We'll give out details. It'll be launched. It will be announced on our Telegram and on Twitter. So be sure to follow all of us there. But we'll be announcing that soon, and we'll talk about that next week for sure on the show. So let's see. One last crypto story I wanted to share was it was the a little bit of Gensler and a little bit more beyond.
Did you guys even get news or wind of the USDT DPEG today?
I heard a little bit about it, but
there's a slight DPEG today. I didn't get to read enough about or see if there was any stories about it, but I did hear about it, and that was really interesting. It was a guy who moved $50 million of USDC, borrowed against it, and bought USDT, and created some kind of arbitrage event. And USDT obviously went down. Not a crazy DPEG, but it was down to like 0.995, which is for them a DPEG.
That's not too terrible. Usually it can go between 99 and 101 I've seen. So that's not too bad. You know, a serious DPEG would be 98 cents or beyond. But the last crypto story
I'll have to remember what it was, but I saw the chart. It was dumping a little when they were calling it, but I saw it correct.
Yeah, it just corrected up some just a minute ago. It was like 99. It was like 998, and then now it's back at 999.
I think we should.
It went down to 997 today. 9964.
I don't know if everybody else's inbox is loading up, but I've seen emails from Bittrex and the BitPay cards. Everything is winding down this week. BitPay, today's June 15th, the last day for the BitPay card to be spent. I know Bittrex is winding down. We're seeing messages from
Crypto.com just changed their terms and conditions.
They're all coming out with more and more terms, especially with the U.S. customers. So that's what it goes back to that choke point 2.0, what we talked about. They can't control Bitcoin. They can't control individual actions, but they can control the banks in between, what they need to operate those cards. Yeah. So that's what they're choking out. But the last story on crypto I wanted to talk about before we talk about silver and gold. This is crypto tokens plunged this week after Gensler stepped up on the SEC crackdown. So this is where he started to say certain things were securities or not securities. And I think he outlined like 15 or so projects that were, he thought were securities. And we've seen many projects, take a tumble this week as a result. He's also been charged. I didn't see where I saw it exactly, but I know I saw it on Twitter where they're coming after Gensler to ask him, trying to get him out, maybe possibly charging him with market manipulation because he was involved in Bitcoin prices that he might be profiting like this, kind of like a certain Speaker of the House that predated the existing one with stock market actions. But we'll see how that plays out too. So there's lots of market manipulation, lots of things going on. There are so many moving pieces right now. It's very difficult to say where, when the music stops, where it all lands. But we know that shares are being taken away.
They introduced it. I think it was called like the Securities Exchange Commission Stabilization Act is what they called it, to fire Gensler. I'm not kidding. I swear to you.
I love the names of these things. That's kind of like the price protect or the plunge protection team for the Dow Jones and maybe NASDAQ as well. If the markets go down too much, they'll just
3 days ago, Dan just tweeted. He said, an SEC Stabilization Act was just filed to restructure the SEC and fire Gary Gensler.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're coming after Gensler. They because he's been two-faced on a lot of things. There's been tweets about some things he said 4 or 5 years ago, especially about Ethereum. Like he had a video where he said Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash were not securities, but that was back before Ethereum switched their blockchain from proof of work to proof of stake. So people don't, again, you need to know what's under the hood to be really like we do, like to really understand the differences there, that Ethereum in 2018 is not the same as the Ethereum today. It's a difference where the other projects, they're all basically derived off the initial Bitcoin blockchain version of proof of work. So projects that are proof of work are basically almost guaranteed, can't guarantee anything, but most likely not going to be securities. They're not going to be deemed as securities. So Litecoin, Bitcoin, Digibyte, Bitcoin Cash, those ones will probably be fine. The ones that are not.
Dogecoin. The other one is Dogecoin is the big one people forget about.
And Dogecoin's a partner with Litecoin as well. Litecoin worked with them as well. They worked in helped Dogecoin early on, and you can kind of co-mine those two at the same time. So there's several projects that have been out there for a while that are proof of work that don't have to worry about this. But also, people need to understand most people in the U.S. are very U.S. centric in their viewpoints. Crypto is global, and people in Europe and people in Asia don't really care what the SEC thinks. So while the price may fluctuate based on what U.S. markets are doing, U.S. market involvement in crypto is going down and down, whereas the global utility for crypto is going up. All right. Speaking of dollars,
I want to say something real quick. To that point is what Patrick brought up in the beginning about people being bought. Just know that this is a dynamic that's at play, and they're never going to say it. But a lot of these crypto projects, a lot of these crypto influencers, basically were insiders on just printing up a bunch of tokens out of thin air, some random project, then spending hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars, marketing these tokens, these new blockchains as a solution to whatever made up problem, creating enough liquidity for that project, and then dumping those tokens and making a lot of and basically turning nothing plus some marketing hype into fiat dollars, and then converting that into gold, silver, Bitcoin, whatever. So they have these resources, and if people can be bought off, like Patrick mentioned in the beginning, guaranteed a lot of the messages you might be hearing are, a lot of the campaigns you might be hearing are funds being siphoned or handed to a marketing company or some sort of publishing company to publish an article, to push a story, to push an angle, to change your perception about something. So this stuff is going on heavily in the space. There's a lot of money and there's been a lot of money that's been made and a lot of money at stake in this space. And so guaranteed you have some people out there that don't necessarily have the best morals, that are trying to push certain agendas so that they can continue making money, so they can keep the scheme going. So you have to be very careful with what information you trust that you see come through, right? And just to make sure just to verify stuff and really just follow the money. Who's talking about this? Where do they get their money? How do they make their money? Why do they have an incentive to keep this going? And I think this is one of the insidious things about the crypto space is you have big time influencers that, they want to keep the party going. And they're going to say just about anything because that's their livelihood. That's what they're going to be like, this is for your freedom. This is for your rights and all this kind of stuff. And really, it's just so that they can continue to make money off of people. So I think that's an important perspective to consider, even if you don't believe it, to consider when you look at a lot of this stuff coming out in the next, in the past few months and then the months going forward for sure.
Absolutely. You got to question everything. But one thing that's also moving very dynamically, just to share this one as well. I don't know if you guys saw, but we had a dip in the dollar today on the Dixie. It went down a couple percentage points. Not sure exactly why, but could be a number of reasons. I'm trying to.
The reason why is because Europe decided to increase their rates, and we decided to do nothing. So the basket changed a little bit, and dollar tanked in value.
Right. Now, a certain conference did start over in Russia this weekend, but I haven't heard anything from that. That's the SPIEF conference. That's the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in Russia. And then a couple of weeks later, I think NATO's meeting. And then August in Durban, the BRICS meeting is coming. It's only 2 months out. So there's going to be a lot of information that comes out. Now, this time of year usually is a quiet time for a lot of markets because there's an old saying, everyone goes away in May. It's like you sell and go away. It's like everybody's like leaving for summer, vacation, school's out, that sort of thing, and not a lot of activity in the markets. But I want to remind that often some people try to sneak things through in the summer. And there was a special, there's a statement in August of 1971, which is when we left the gold standard. So in the dog days of summer, things can happen, and that's when the BRICS meeting is happening. So just wanted to point that out, and we can take a look. Let's turn our attention over to silver and gold. And Patrick, I'm going to share this chart here, the price in Bitcoin of silver, how that's looking, and what's your comments on this?
Yeah, so this over here is just showing us again the Satoshic value, how many sats it takes to buy 1 ounce of silver. So today we're sitting at 91,000 sats, which to be honest is not a terrible price. So in terms of how much silver you're getting for Bitcoin, it's not bad, because we do see that silver is down a little bit. But the reality is when we start valuing everything in Satoshis, you start to see that there's some opportunities here. And as Bitcoin continues to grow in value, this is where you maybe start using the information to consider whether you have silver and that's the right play to have, or maybe when Bitcoin dips and silver's worth a lot of sats, maybe that's the time to consider changing your strategy.
Yeah, and this is the kind of arbitrage and ratios that we're constantly looking at, and that's what we'll be talking about, at the Silver Symposium. As Patrick is our host there, September 29th to October 1st. You can see in the description of this video, there was going to be a link to tickets. They're only $89. Patrick, we got a lot of tickets sold already, right? We got 3 months out. What are the numbers looking like? How many people are coming?
Yeah, so what I could tell you now is we have a limited number of hotels, and that's our biggest risk right now. Is we have I think only 400 or 500 rooms, and I'm pretty sure they're all already going to be spoken for based on the number of ticket sales we already have. So we're looking at an event that's going to probably be in the thousands.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at 600 people already. With the list of speakers is growing exponentially, I'd say. It's just, there's Jack from Noe Special, who Patrick did a video with him today. It's his channel over Noe Special Finance, and that video come out later probably tomorrow or this weekend. So stay tuned for that. But Stock Pulse is the feature sponsor, but of course, Economic Preppers is also a big sponsor as well. Let's see there's the Bitcoin and Brews, Economic Preppers, and the Ballet Vault workshop be Friday night. So there's more and more being added to this description here. There'll be lots of activities Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So stay tuned for that. But get your tickets now, and don't delay, because there's a lot to be coming down the pike on this event.
And let's just say this: I have not yet released everyone that's coming, but I have some names on the line that it will be a pretty awesome event. And I could tell you guys, I'll be doing interviews with a lot of them coming up, so you'll know who they are. But there's some big names that I'm very much looking forward to hosting, and it's going to be an honor to have them all.
Yeah. I do want to say real quick is that just for today, we'll put a notification out. But Southwest is having a sale, or had a sale, so maybe go check in on that. It's like 40% off flights. To get, if you're looking to maximize your or minimize your costs, so you can buy more Bitcoin and buy more silver, definitely check into that for the Silver Symposium.
And we'll be sure to put that on Telegram and tweet that out too. So we'll get that out there. Guys, that's about all I had for the show today. But I did have one other thing I observed this week. This is kind of with all the different news that's coming out in our bucket theory. This is kind of in bucket 2 for me, and I just wanted to share it. It's a little bit out there, but I had a thought the other day, and I just know there's a certain 17th letter of the alphabet, and they like numbers. And there's a certain form that's been talked about a lot over and over and over again lately, and it's the FD 1023 form. So I just thought about 1023. I keep hearing that number over and over again. So what does post 1023 say? So I went and looked. So let me share my screen one last time, and I'm going to share post number 1023. And hopefully, let me zoom in on this. So the date doesn't really too much. So there's the post number. But here's the post. We don't say his name. Adios. The protected flow front into Arizona is no more. I could have many meanings, but under the cover of his health, he will not be seeking another term. That caught my attention. So if you think about it and just piecing that together, just putting that together, like the form leads to this post. The form number leads to this post number, and the post number kind of circles back to the subject of the person. And that form had things redacted out of it, including 17 audio files, audio tapes and recordings that were redacted out of the first version. So it kind of completes that whole circle of that conversation. Just putting that out there, that I'm not saying it's a proof for anything, but I'm just saying
the numbers you didn't say are 2, 5, 3, or 6, which right now Bitcoin's $25,636. So to me, I think that tells everyone they should go buy Bitcoin. But that's not financial advice. It's just what I'm seeing in the absence of your numbers.
Yeah, I think that, you can definitely take a look at the marketplace and say that Bitcoin is in good price, as are several other coins.
I mean, bro, Biden's old. He looks like he's about to die. Okay, like he can't even walk. He can't even get up off the floor when he's not walking. So don't think you have to be like anyone special to recognize that like this guy's probably not gonna make it.
Well, yeah, I agree. I just thought it was interesting to see that how it led into a full circle of conversation there.
Yeah, I don't know what to say on that, except if that kind of stuff is true, mind is blown. Maybe someone's cracked the simulation and is getting fed some details from the outside.
Well, we do know that, to bring our show full circle, that Trump was allegedly arrested, but there's no record of it. There's no mugshot. There's nothing on file in the Miami courthouse. And people are, this is like what we know. Like, this is the bucket theory again. We're gonna get lots of news in the next days, weeks ahead, and you have to say what is fact and what is fiction, what's in between. The fact is, we're told he got arrested, but there's no proof of an actual arrest being made. Normally, when someone's arrested, they're booked and there's proof. There's a mugshot. There's fingerprints. There's a record made, and no one can find it yet in Miami. So that's just something that, just to say that's out there. Just like, why isn't that yet? Is it just not available yet, or did it not really happen? It was in closed doors and there were no cameras. We'll have to see. So could all be a show. But speaking about shows, that's about all the time we have for today. So I'm just going to wrap things up. I'll pass it around one last time as we conclude. Dylan, any last thoughts?
I do have one that I think would be important is I had someone ask, where is the best place to buy Bitcoin? Because I know we've mentioned it several times, and with Operation Choke Point in effect, and not every state allows you to have access to that. Do you guys just have any real quick suggestions or ideas for someone looking to secure their finances with Bitcoin?
I would say reach out to a consultant that you trust, which you could be looking at 3 of them right now. And I think we can take care of you. In fact, I had a client do that very same thing today for asking them for advice, and I gave her a personal guarantee that I'll take care of her. So that's it. We are going to be having products up on the webpage very soon to buying Bitcoin prepaid cards, but we'll have that ability and we'll be able to do that. But yes, it is, with the choke point happening and getting harder and harder to do and harder to find people that you trust. Find someone that's been doing it for a while and vet them. See, just buy something small and see if it works out okay. But somebody that's willing to put their name out there and be out there on a regular basis, that's been doing it for years, it's probably not a bad decision.
Yeah, I guess the answer I would say is it would depend on how much you're trying to put in, right? So small amounts, you just kind of want them to get used to it. And I would say that any one of the apps, like Coinbase One is a good app, it gets you lower fees. But if you got someone who wants, let's say, 25 Bitcoin, and they, that's a very different amount of money that we're playing with here. And, if you say you want 25 Bitcoin, then the strategy may not to be a KYC Bitcoin. It might just be buying one of these, like a physical loaded with 25 Bitcoin on it. So it just depends on what you need and who's selling what in the market right now. It really very much is like silver. When you go to the silver store, you go to a silver shop, there's a premium attached to it. And there are some things that have more or less numismatic value than other items. And that's the same with Bitcoin. You can invest your money in Bitcoin and still have a physical token and sell that physical token as a representation of a Bitcoin denominated value and never actually move Bitcoin on the blockchain. And there are places you can buy that too. So it just really depends on what you want and how you're going to hold it and what the intention is of having that Bitcoin.
Great question. Patrick, any final thoughts for the viewers?
Yeah. hug your friends and family close tonight, because you never know what may happen the next day. So always love your family and kids and squeeze them tight.
Yeah, that's why we do what we do, and that's part of the community that we build. So with all that said, that's the end of our show for this week, and we really appreciate you. Again, please like, share, subscribe. Look forward to seeing everybody out in Vegas at the end of September. But until then, be prepared and not scared, and we'll see you soon. Take care.